I want to share with you something. I thought about this past Shabbos. I was in Tzfat with some of the guys, so I want to hold on to the trip a little bit as much as I can. So I'm going to share with you an idea that I had over there. Right, so in the beginning of the parsha, we have in Parshas Vayakel, we have Moshe Rabbeinu telling the Jewish people about the mitzvah of building the Mishkan, of building the tabernacle. In the past couple parshias, Hashem Yisbarach has been telling Moshe about it, and now Moshe relates it to the Jewish people. So Moshe, sort of before he gets started about talking about the building and what needs to be done, so he introduces it with discussing the concept of Shabbos. Right? That's what it says in Pasuk Vayakel. Moshe is called Das B'nai Yisrael. Moshe gathers everyone together and says, 6 days you should work. The 7th day should be Shabbos. He tells us Shabbos, the mitzvah of Shabbos, and then he says, and also the Rebbeinu Shalom wants me to tell you that there's a mitzvah of building a Mishkan. Right, so we already see a connection, a very strong connection, clearly between Shabbos and building a temple, building a Mishkan. The truth is, we know that even all the laws of Shabbos are related to building of the Mishkan. Everything that was done in order to build the Mishkan is prohibited on Shabbos. So there's a connection between the two. So the question is, what is that connection? What is it about the Mishkan and Shabbos? What's the relationship between the two of them? Okay. Now, that's number one. Number two, another point that we have to think about is when it comes to the Mishkan in general, Rashi in last week's parsha and Chazal in a Medrash in a couple places explains that even though in the order of the parshas it's not so clear, but Rashi and Chazal explain that the Mishkan was actually this mitzvah of building the Mishkan, of having a Beis HaMikdash, was really a response to the sin of the Egel. We know Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from Shemayim after 40 days, 40 nights with the Luchos, and he sees the Jewish people sitting with a golden calf. He breaks the Luchos, spends 40 days davening, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, Rabbanan Shalom, Hashem says, okay, Slach li K'tvarecha, I forgive them, let's move on. And as a sign of Hashem Yisbarach, sort of his forgiveness, and as a sign of the Jewish people sort of rectifying that mistake, he gives us the mitzvah of the Mishkan. So the Mishkan is the correction of the sin of the golden calf. That's the opinion of Rashi. And so the question is, how do we understand that? What is it about the Mishkan that fixes that mistake of the golden calf? The golden calf was a terrible sin, it was idolatry. What is the Mishkan repairing exactly? How is that fixing the mistake? So the thing is like this. In last week's parsha, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from the mountain, right, and Hashem told him about what was going on. Hashem told him about the golden calf, what was going on. But he didn't see it with his own two eyes. So he comes down the mountain, and he's greeted by his student, Yusua. Yusua ben Nun, the pasuk tells us, was not hanging out with the rest of the Jewish people. He stayed by the foot of the mountain, waiting for Moshe Rabbeinu. So Yusua really didn't know what was going on in the camp. So the pasuk says like this. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down, meets Yusua ben Nun, and it says, V'yishma Yeshua's kol ha'am b'reya. Yeshua hears the sound of what's going on in the camp. And it says in pasuk, V'yira Moshe, and he says to Moshe, kol milchama b'machne. It sounds like there's a war going on. And so Moshe Rabbeinu says to him, it's interesting, Moshe says, no, ein kol anais gevura, that's not the sound of people that are victorious, that's not the sound of victory. Ve'ein kol anais chalusha, that's not the sound of people that are weak, that's not the sound of people being conquered. Kol anais anochi shemei, I hear the sound of pain. What does that mean? So Rashi explains, and again, at a simple level, it means that they were having a conversation about what sound is being heard. Yusua ben Nun misheard it and thought it was a sound of war. And Moshe is saying, no, it's not the sound of victory or the sound of defeat. It's a sound of people doing averis, which causes me pain. That's how Rashi interprets it. Okay. The difficulty with that pshat, Mefarsh and the commentators already explained, is that what is the significance of this conversation for us? Why is the pasuk recording this? That Yusua ben Nun heard sound and he thought it was war, and Moshe says, no, it's not war, it's the sound of people sinning. What is that? Why is that in Chumash? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu said a lot more in his life than what's recorded. Yusua ben Nun said a lot more in his life than what's recorded. What's recorded is obviously something a lesson for us. So what do we learn from this? So I mentioned this on Shabbos. The concept is that the Svar Makdashim explained that this conversation between Moshe and Yeshua was the first lesson in leadership that Moshe Rabbeinu ever gave over to Yusua ben Nun. Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching Yeshua what it takes to be a leader, what it takes to be a good friend, to be a good father, a husband. The Mefarshim explained like this. The Sfarim explained as follows: that Yeshua didn't make a mistake in thinking that there was a war going on. When Yeshua ben Nun said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I hear the sound of war, what he meant was not physical war. He meant was that I hear the sound of people rebelling against God, waging war against God. That's what Avodah Zarah is. And what Moshe Rabbeinu was responding to Yeshua ben Nun is an important message, which is the following. Just saying that people are doing something wrong doesn't help anybody. A mashal. Let's say a person, goes to the doctor and they have a fever of like 105, and they're nauseous and they're throwing up and they're green, not doing well. Go to the doctor, spend a lot of time in the waiting room, then the second waiting room, and then eventually you get to see the doctor. And the doctor examines you, spends some time, looks up in the notes, whatever it is, and then he comes back and says, after studying your situation and looking at your medical history, my diagnosis is you're sick. Shkoyach. I could have told you I'm sick. I don't need you to tell me all the medical school. That's all you get. Tell me what's wrong. Why am I sick? Tell me what's causing my sickness. Tell me how to get better. Moshe Rabbeinu was telling Yeshua ben Nun that you're going to be the next leader, and as the leader, when you see things going wrong, the response is you're doing something wrong. That doesn't help anybody. What Moshe is telling Yeshua is that you have to diagnose the problem, dig deeper, understand the underlying cause of the problem. And what Moshe Rabbeinu says to then Yeshua, as we'll see in a second, is Moshe is telling Yeshua a big lesson, which is that there are different reasons why a Jew would sin. There are different reasons why a person would make a mistake, and you have to pinpoint the issue that's in front of you to know what's the cause, to then fix that problem. And Moshe says the following thing: it's not the sound of like kolonis gevura. It's not the sound of strength. It's not the sound of weakness. It's the sound of pain. What does that mean? Moshe is saying to Yeshua ben Nun that there can be theoretically 3 different reasons why a Jew would sin, why a Jew would do something wrong. Option 1, gevura. What is gevura? Gevura means that there is a quality, there is an aspect of the human psychology that you want to be your own person. You want to have some sense of independence. You want to have strength. You don't want to be told what to do. There is a part of the human being that's like that. And an overinflated ego, in a sense of wanting to have one's own power, gevura, that could be a cause for a person to rebel against Yiddishkeit. A person can throw Yiddishkeit off one's shoulders. A person can rebel, can do something wrong, just as an act of trying to establish themselves in the world. That's a possible reason. What Moshe says to Yeshua is, "Loi kol aneskva." That's not the sound of the ego. That's not why they're doing the ego. Just to rebel, just to be able to establish themselves as something. It's not why. And then Moshe Rabbeinu goes on. There's another reason why a person would theoretically sin, not out of strength, but out of weakness. Sometimes a person sins because the Yetzer Hara, the temptation, is just so strong, and they feel overwhelmed by that, and they don't know that they have the power to overcome, and they feel weakened, and they're sort of overtaken by it. That could be another cause. And again, a person has to know if that's the cause, then it needs a certain medication. But Moshe says, "Loi kol anos chalusha." That's not what's going on with the ego either. The ego is not a sin that's coming because of an inflated ego, and it's not a sin that's coming because of a deflated or a lack of strength. Again, if it's happening, if you're a father, husband, teacher, friend, and so on, rabbi, again, and you're dealing with someone who's doing something wrong, you have to know what the issue is. Sometimes the issue is an inflated ego. They don't want to deal with being told what to do. That takes a certain medication then. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's a weakness, and the person doesn't feel they have the strength to handle the temptation, to overcome that obstacle. That takes a certain medication. But Moshe says, but the ego is neither. It's not the voice of strength. It's not the voice of weakness. What is it? It's the voice of pain. What does that mean? What Moshe is saying is a deep thing, is that there is another third cause for rebelliousness, a third cause for sin, which is that the person has an inner fear and an inner anxiety about not being able to live up to God's standards. There is such a thing that a person, let's say, is having a relationship, and the person, there's a phenomenon in life where a person can sabotage, their own relationship with another person, right? Why would you do that? Like psychologically, why would a person ever sabotage a relationship? The answer is very often, one of the causes is that they don't feel worthy of the relationship. and therefore they're always afraid of, let's say, getting dumped, or getting fired, or being kicked out of the team. So instead of going through the bizyonis, the embarrassment of getting dumped, so you can't dump me, I'm going to dump you. Right? They'll sabotage the relationship out of an inner anxiety, an inner fear, an inner pain. What Moshe is saying to Yeshua ben Nun is that that's the cause of the ego. The cause of the ego, let's think back for a second. The Jewish people standing by Har Sinai, right? Nasa v'nishma, unbelievable. And then, in a matter of a few days later, they're dancing around the golden calf. Like, what happened? So the pasuk says what happened was, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to heaven. The Jewish people lose calculations. They're not sure, according to their calculations, Moshe should be back. And they come to Aaron and they say, we're mamash lost. That person, Moshe Rabbeinu, that took us out of Egypt, he's in heaven, he's gone, he's not coming back. And now what do we do? Meaning, what was going on psychologically? The Sfarim explained what was going on is as follows. The Jewish people didn't see themselves as people that were inherently worthy of a relationship with God. They saw themselves as people that were stuck in the slave pits of Egypt. And how do we get out of there? How do we find ourselves by Har Sinai? Because we had this unbelievable angel of a person called Moshe Rabbeinu that took us out. And it's only because of Moshe Rabbeinu that we have any relationship with God at all. And so if Moshe Rabbeinu goes away, we're mamish stuck. They did not believe that they would be able to live up on their own without a Moshe Rabbeinu. They did not believe they would be able to live up to that standard of being God's people. So what do you do when you have that inner fear and that inner pain and that inner anxiety of constantly thinking that you're about to get dumped? So what do? So you sabotage the relationship. That's what the Jewish people did. We serve Avodah Zarah. Again, that's the question everyone always asks. Avodah Zarah, how could they fall into such a mistake? That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying. It's not an inflated ego, and it's not a weakness that they were overcome with a Yetzer Hara. It's coming from an inner pain. That's what Moshe says. I'm not hearing the sound of gevura, of overinflated strength, of ego. I'm not hearing the sound of weakness. I'm hearing the sound of pain. And so once Moshe Rabbeinu sees the issue and understands the underlying cause of the problem, that's his lesson to Yeshua, that you're going to be the next leader. It's not enough to just to say that you're a bad boy. You have to explain, you have to analyze, understand what the problem is and fix it. If that's the underlying issue of the Chet Egel, then what's the remedy of the Chet Egel? The remedy is not to just say you're sorry. Of course that has to be part of it. But the real remedy is to strengthen and to fortify your emunah, your faith, in your inherent relationship with God. That's the answer. That's the antidote to the ego. And so, going back to what we said in the beginning, according to Rashi, the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle, is the tikkun, is the antidote to the sin of the golden calf. How so? The answer is, again, because, of course, after the sin, the Jewish people had to do tshuva in the regular way of saying you're sorry and accepting not to do it again, certainly, but that doesn't fix the underlying cause. The underlying cause was a fear and an anxiety and a sense of not being worthy of this relationship. And so what's the answer? The antidote is the Rebbeinu Shalom strengthening us and telling us that you should know, I want this relationship. I want to be with you. That's the Mishkan. The Mishkan is what? The Rebbeinu Shalom says, the Rebbeinu Shalom is in heaven and we're on earth. That's fine. What's the idea of the tabernacle? What's the idea of the temple? The temple, as Rebbeinu Shalom says, that's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for me that I'm up here and you're down here. I want to live with you. I want to be a part of you. B'toich tumasam, with all your issues. Whenever you have a sin, I want you to bring that sacrifice and bring it into my house. The Mishkan means that Rebbeinu Shalom wants this relationship as much as we do, even more so. And therefore, that's the antidote to the ego. A person, therefore, should never feel any anxiety and a person should not look at Yiddishkeit as this huge burden and this huge this huge responsibility that they have that it's almost overwhelming to deal with. A person certainly has to go in with the Yiddishkeit a sense of responsibility and reverence to the mission, but to know at the end of the day that as long as we do what we can, as much as we can, the Rebbeinu Shalom loves us for that, and there's nothing we can do to ultimately undermine our relationship with God, and He wants this relationship. That's what the Mishkan is. This is also the relationship of the Mishkan and Shabbos. What's Shabbos? Shabbos is different than any other mitzvah. Hashem gave us a lot of mitzvahs. What's unique about Shabbos? Shabbos is described as a bris, as a covenant, as a bond between us and God. It's like, let's say, you live somewhere, you have a neighbor, right? And so you get along with your neighbor. It's fine. He takes out the garbage, you take out the garbage. When you see each other, you're friendly, say hello, good morning, good evening. It's fine. Do you really know that but it's hard to know, though, that you have a real relationship with the guy, right? It's hard to know whether you're really friends or just your friends because of proxy, because of just convenience. How do you know that you're a real friend? Well, the way to know that you're a real friend is if your neighbor comes to you and says, you know what, I'm going on vacation somewhere, and I can't bear, not having you. I love seeing you every day. So do me a favor, why don't you come on vacation with me? Then you know you're a real friend. That's what Shabbos. That's what Shabbos is. Shabbos is Rabbanu Shalom takes care of us during the 6 days of the week, right? And then on Shabbos he goes on vacation, right? He goes to his own place somewhere, right? And Hashem says, but come with me. I don't want to just be away. Then you know that Rabbanu Shalom really wants this. Shabbos, Mishkan, it's the antidote to the ego. We have to be mechazik ourselves. That the person should never be afraid of Yiddishkeit, be afraid of that responsibility. Because although it is a responsibility, the Rabbanu Shalom knows, at the end of the day, He loves us no matter what. And Yiddishkeit is about trying to live up to that expectation as much as possible. But to never to have that anxiety and fear and pachad and awe and that nervousness that comes, the pain that comes with that. A person should not fall with that. So Rabbanu Shalom, we should be zaycha to strengthen ourselves and to keep Shabbos and in a way that's real and to be masak in the chet of the ego. When we do that, we'll be zaycha to have a lichtige Yiddishkeit that's full of simcha and ahav and exuberance, and the person will then find the energy to overcome obstacles and to become the person that they can through that sense of confidence. Thank you, Hashem.